Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Scott Hanlon, and I am the Director of Program Operations here at NFRC. We appreciate you taking some time out of your busy schedule today to attend today's session to learn about NFRC ballots. Before we get started, here's some general information about the presentation. One, you will get this presentation that you'll see on the screen, and it'll be made available to you. And then if you have any questions during the webinar, please use the question dashboard. And if time permits, at the end of the presentation, I'll be happy to handle some questions. Now, let's get down to business and learn about what are NFRC's ballots, how ballots are developed, how responses are handled, and the different ballot outcomes. First, we're going to start with understanding what is a ballot. Now, NFRC uses ballots as a mechanism to propose changes to technical documents or program documents. For example, there could be a technical ballot to revise a way we test something, or for a new testing procedure or rating, or an update to a program requirement, such as a modification to a label. In any case, as a consensus organization, NFRC provides our members the opportunity to have their voices heard in the development and the outcome of any technical specification and program requirements. On the left side of the screen, you'll see here, this is just a simple example of a cover letter that is with each ballot. This is the first page you'll see when you open up the ballot document. And later in the presentation, I will explain in more detail the importance of this cover letter, which will help you understand more about ballots. Now, anyone can help with the development of a ballot. However, only member companies can vote and move language to handle ballots. So if you're interested in having the opportunity for your voice to be heard, please reach out to Jessica Finn, our membership manager, for some membership information. As I said, NFRC has technical documents and program documents on how to rate, test, or label products. Well, we also have a governing document on NFRC operations, and that's such as handling of ballots from creation to the outcome. And this is located in Section 4 of the NFRC 710. So if you have any confusion after this presentation, this document will be available for you. So please download it, and to help refresh yourself on how to handle ballots, look at the 710. Now we're going to look at the ballot cycle, and we can start with how ballots are developed. The reason for developing a ballot is because there's a need to perhaps change current language or develop language for a new test, rating, or process. Initially, it's the responsibility of a task group which has a scope to handle a specific task, like the development of a ballot. The task group is comprised of a small number of NFRC stakeholders, usually between 15 to 20, and the task group meets online at the discretion of the task group chair. It's generally once or twice a month, but it really depends on the urgency of that task group completing their task. Now, to develop the ballot, the task group may be getting into the weeds. There may be the need to perform research, do some testing or simulations to assist with the development of the document language. And to support the task group members, there's a web page for all the active task groups, which will allow you to stay up to date on the progress of each task group's responsibility and task. And it's also important to note that anyone can be involved with the task group. There's no limitations. You do not need to be a member. The participation of subject matter experts at this level will definitely help to increase the chances for the ballot to be successful. Now, after the task group did their job and developed ballot language, now it's time to understand how does a ballot become language in an NFRC document. This is where the ballot cycle happens in a process of 3 different phases while following the rules in the NFRC 710 requirements. Now, the first phase is the pre-meeting phase. Now, during the pre-meeting phase, members review the ballot and provide responses in accordance with the NFRC 710. First, all member companies will be able to access the ballots via NFRC Spec Builder website. Information on that can be found in the resource section of this presentation. Now, when you download the ballots, the information about the ballot and where it's located is the cover letter, which will help guide you to understand the important factors of a ballot. So let's look at this ballot page we have here. First, you can see this ballot was happening during the membership meeting fall 2020. Then the ballot name. This ballot here is about the ANSI NFRC 200, and it's regarding spandrels. There's also a committee that governs where the ballots occur, and that happens in this case. The ANSI 200 is a technical document, so this will happen under the technical committee. And then there is usually a governing subcommittee of that document, and in this case, this is the SHDC subcommittee. And another important factor are about the ballot dates. There's the open and close dates. So you will receive an email about when the ballot's open, and you'll have a deadline to submit your ballot responses. The last important item here is about what's the description of the ballot. This could be information about a new ballot, or why are there changes to the document's language. The description should also contain a summary to provide a history about a ballot if this topic has been repeatedly balloted. There will also be contact information. The liaison, the ballot author, and even the chair of the subcommittee or task group will have their email available. And if you're confused about the ballot, please contact staff or the ballot author for any assistance prior to submitting your ballot responses. And we do have a link here about a tutorial on how to do your ballot responses. This will take you to a tutorial about the spec builder. So if you're interested, you can click here when you receive this presentation. Now, after you review the ballot, you have 3 different responses to provide. If you do not have any comments and the ballot language is accurate, your response would be approved. If you do select approve for the ballot, but still place comments, just to let you know, those comments do not need to be addressed. Now, if you do not agree with any of the proposed language, you will submit a negative vote. If you're going to take anything away from this presentation, this is the most important point. All negative responses need to have a comment or a reason or alternate language accompanying your vote. Whether you change the language in the document using track changes or just provide a reason for the negative response. The response you need to provide the recommended language is given to the membership. You're providing them the reason, and they to either agree or disagree with your comment. So that's very important. Make sure you always have some type of comment with the submitted negative. Now, the final way you can vote is to choose abstain from voting, which can be for any reason. It is important to remember, any comment submitted with an abstain vote does not need to be addressed at the meeting as well. Now, after the ballot deadline and upon receipt of all the ballot responses, staff and the ballot author and the chair may categorize the negative ballot responses. Now, you may be asking, what's meant by categorizing the negative responses? This is when the ballot responses are reviewed and categorized to assist membership during a meeting to discuss the negative responses. Now, negative responses can be categorized in 3 different ways. A negative response, categorized as substantive, means the negative ballot comment provides significant change to the intent of the proposed ballot language. A negative response categorized as editorial means the negative ballot comment seeks clarification or may be offering new language that's not a significant change to the proposed ballot language. And then a negative response categorized as non-germane means the negative ballot is unrelated to the ballot in some general manner or the proposed language, or the negative response contains no comments, no explanation, or no alternate language. Again, I'll go back to making sure you provide information and comments if you propose a negative response. If you don't have anything there, it's just going to be found non-germane. Now, there is a chance we may have to reach out to you when reviewing the ballot responses. We may have questions about your ballot response that will help us to categorize the response effectively. There are also some cases when multiple members from the same company provide responses, and we need to figure out which comment to use. And you do need to be concerned about some of the final pre-meeting tasks. You'll be able to download all the ballot negatives so you can review all the ballots and the categorization of those negatives. Include in the categorized responses in the ballot forms, staff will usually be able to provide some factors to consider if the ballot is successful. For example, there may be the need to update software. Training may need to be provided. Changes to program requirements, and any costs or timelines to complete tasks shall need to be considered. And the reason for us providing those factors to membership is so you're aware of any pending tasks or decisions regarding the outcome of ballots. Now, we did a lot of preparation to develop a ballot. The membership had a chance to review and comment on the ballots. Now we need to see what happens to the ballots and the responses at the meeting. This happens at the appropriate governing subcommittee, where each ballot will be on the agenda and each ballot negative will be discussed and presented, and they require a resolution. Now, during the meeting, each responder is provided the opportunity to speak to their negative and present their case. At that time, they can make a motion about the negative in order for the membership to discuss. Each motion requires a first and a second, and then can be voted on by all member companies present. And what we're going to do here is we're going to look at the 5 different ways that we can handle negatives. An editorial and persuasive motion is made when the member is seeking clarification or recommending language that are editorial in nature and not changing the ballot language significantly. Editorial and persuasive negatives that pass allow the ballot to move forward to the committee and to the board for approval. That's important to know. A substantive and persuasive motion is made when the member is seeking significant changes to the provided ballot language. Substantive and persuasive negatives that pass will send the ballot back to the task group for review of the negatives with the intent of hopefully having a new ballot for the next meeting. Now, a non-persuasive motion is made when the negative fails to convince membership of being either substantive or editorial. And then we have a non-germane motion. This is made when the negative comment is considered unrelated to the provided ballot language, or if there's no explanation or alternate language provided with the negative response. And then the last way we can handle a negative, which is not really a motion, but it's when the member company who submitted the negative comment withdraws the negative. This generally occurs when previous action or conversation handled those negative comments. So I've been talking about making motions and handling the negatives, and I think it's the right time to look at how we actually witness this happening. And this is how this happens at the meeting, and we do this by using a motion form. I'm going to scroll down here to the motion form. And this is a new form we just put for this meeting. So for those that are regular at the meeting, you might say, hey, where's the green form? Well, we changed the stuff. Looks a little different color, but also the way for us to process motions much quicker at a meeting. This is not a ballot. This is a motion form. And what staff will do is we'll generate a motion form for each negative response, which sometimes can be extensive because one response, which could be a Word document of a balloted document, could have many negatives. So we need to break each one of them up. I'm going to go through the importance of this document and these forms, the information on this form, which will help you understand how we handle negatives, and it really starts with the company name. The company name will list the member company and the member's initial who submitted the negative response. The section or page box is also important because this lists the location in the balloted document the negative comment is addressing. So when you're submitting any type of language, if you're not using our Word document that's provided, and you're just going to make one comment, be sure to include this when submitting your document and your comment. Now, under the comments section here, this is the negative comments that's provided by the member, and these will be displayed to all participants. All the information I just described will be in the motion form prior to the meeting. So when you download it, the documents, you will actually see this information. Now, the next three parts are filled out during the meeting. To discuss a negative, someone will need to make a motion to handle the negative comments. This is where one of the 5 ways to handle a motion will be added here. The person making the motion, who's usually the member who submitted the negative, will be the first to make the motion. So you can see here, the person made a editorial and persuasive motion. Now there will be a call for someone to second the motion, who is a member that agrees with the motion language. When we have the first and second for a motion, the membership then can begin discussion about the negative comments. After the debate, if necessary, if there's debate, the chair will then call the question and we will take the vote. Now, we'll ask for those in favor of the motion, and we'll ask for those against. We record the votes, which could be used by using unanimous voice vote, unanimous hand vote, or just a voice vote. Or we may have to count the number of votes. The votes are recorded and in this section of the form. You may be asking, what happens if the motion fails? And that's a great question, because all negatives must be resolved. So we will start the process over again for this negative comment until membership resolves and reaches a resolution. Now, when ballots are successful and they're passed by the subcommittee to the governance committee, there's a need to move the ballot forward to the board for approval with a recommendation for implementation. The committee vote will occur immediately following the subcommittee vote using the streamlined processes we've implemented. Only the roster committee members can vote when a committee motion is called to move the ballot forward to the board. The final step is to move the successful ballot forward occurs during the board's closing session that happens at the end of the membership meeting. Each governing committee chair will report to the board on the actions that occurred during their committee block. A board motion will be needed to handle the committee's approved motion on how to handle the implementation of the language. Now we know at all times members cannot meet every different association's meeting that happens during the year. Now, to make sure that your voice is heard and your vote counts, NFRC does have a policy that allows for a member company to be a proxy. Now, there's a specific form that needs to be filled out, and you provide that to NFRC so the attending member company can be your proxy. If you cannot make the meeting, we highly recommend that you reach out to another member company and assign them as your proxy. This will also definitely help if you have a negative, so one can speak on your behalf about your negative. It's very, very important if you cannot make a meeting and have specifically sent in some negatives. Now, the handling of the ballots does not stop once the meeting ends, as there are some post-meeting tasks that we have to wrap up. When a ballot is not approved, which usually occurs with a passed substantive or persuasive motion, the ballot goes back to the task group for additional discussion and development. I do want to stress something important that I mentioned earlier. Having subject matter experts attend task group calls can really help support this endeavor. So if your negative happens to be responsible for sending a ballot back, please try to attend those task group calls to assist in the development of the next ballot. And there are times when ballots are successful. However, there are many items that may require consideration before implementing a publication, and those ballots are held in advance. Many times, the motion language will contain such language. There's a link available on this page here to help to look at review the ballots that have been approved, but they're being held in advance. And you can also see here the snapshot of the web page. This is just the top part of it. That's how it looks. Now, here's some of the reasons why ballots are held in advance. We have 6 ANSI NFRC documents. Now, for any revisions to those documents to be implemented, we need to ballot the language changes through the ANSI process. And that can take anywhere up to 3, 4, 5, 6 months. Maybe there's an update to our enterprise level application, such as the CPD. The business rules, the cost to do that, the time frame, and the approvals to get those changes done will happen before we implement changes to the documents. And then there are some times when we have program-related requirements. Sometimes there may be training or manuals need to be updated, and that will delay the implementation of approved ballot language. For ballots that are approved, and even though there's no delay in the implementation of the ballot language, we do have some tasks. We need to format the ballot according to the approved ballot language. NFRC will also distribute a bulletin providing the implementation details and requirements. You will receive an email that looks familiar to the one here on the screen and will contain links and all the program requirements associated with any of the documents that were approved and the ballots changing. The documents are also published on the appropriate webpage, whether this is a technical or program document. The link here will send you to the community's webpage where you can access all of our technical, program, or operation documents. Now, we would not be doing our job if we did not give you some resources to support you with understanding how to handle ballots. Now, you can use the following links to access a particular topic at your leisure. The first one here is our Spec Builder FAQ. This will help you to understand how to access ballots. Then there's a link to the 710 document. This is our operations policy document. You want to look and see how we handle all the stuff I talked about with ballots. That's located here in this document. And I did mention that task groups are the best place to develop ballots. So here's a link to our volunteer webpage. If you're interested in volunteering, please click on the link below for the volunteer opportunities. This page also contains a link to all of active task groups as well. And finally, NFRC does have a webpage for our ballots. So you can use this link to see what ballots are underway for the next meeting. And speaking of a meeting, please do join us virtually at our spring meeting scheduled to start March 29th. You can just click on the link below to gain access to the meeting registration. So I want to thank you for your time listening to me here babble about our ballots. I hope it was informative. And if we do have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them.
Hey, Scott, we have one question.
Okay, great.
So if I see a typo, do I need to actually submit a negative, or for that, can I approve with comment and trust that that change will be made?
Now, that's a great question. The answer is no, you need to submit a negative.
Okay. On one other question, for if we have more than one negative, can we put that on one comment, or do we need to do two?
When you submit, that's another great question. So when you submit your responses, some people will actually use the Word document that's submitted for the ballot, and there may be multiple changes inside that. You would just submit that one document. If you are not going to use a document and just want to reference a section and just change that, you can put that in one submittal, and what we will do is we will break that down and put, if it's, let's say 2, we would have a motion form for both responses. So you just have to provide one submit, we will make sure we get that appropriately, the appropriate number in the motion form for it.
Okay. That looks like all of the questions.
Great.
So, and if you do have questions that you think of after the presentation, you can just email and we'll be happy to answer your questions. All right, thanks again everyone for joining us and have a great afternoon. We hope to see everyone at the meeting.